Welcome to the Mo Show Live, everybody. Hey, I'm Morris Lilienthal. We've got a great guest on today's show, Jim Batson, who is the president of H.C. Blake Company. I'm looking forward to talking to Jim about the rich history of his company and how his company's changed and evolved over the last 135 years, I believe it is, Jim, and his passion and his family and his company's passion for giving back to our Huntsville community. So it's going to be a great show and really love talking to people here in our Huntsville community about their local businesses and how they give back and reach out to our local community that's probably given them so much. Jim, I tell you, your company is kind of a full service HVAC company, plumbing and electrical contractor. I don't know if I'm your best client or your worst because I am the least handy person in Huntsville, no doubt. But I tell you, the only thing I'll say about me is that I know it. And so I don't even start. I just pick the phone up and call you guys and just say, hey, come fix this before I tear into something to make it even worse. So at least I know it on the front end, and I'm sure some of your clients probably don't, and I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse for them or you, but you guys are there when people need them, and I know I need you because I am not handy at all. But Jim, I know today is a big day for you guys. You opened up your new location today, so thank you for taking time, and congratulations to you and your company.
Well, thank you very much. We had about, I think we had right at 600 people for our grand opening lunch, and it was a big success. We had every walk of life. We had every person in every position. We had from homeless people all the way up to scientists and doctors and aerospace engineering. So it was a very diverse crowd, and we were glad to serve the Huntsville community.
Wow, that's so awesome. And I know, you guys take a lot of pride in what you do and take a lot of pride in the community you're in, just like our firm does here. And having been here as long as we have, and you guys have been here even longer than we have. And, it's a big deal. And you want to take care of the community that takes care of you. And I think that's so upstanding that you guys do that. I guess what I'd start is, the company and you guys are proud of it and you have every right to be. Was started in, I think it's 1884, been around for 135 years now. Talk to our viewers just a little bit about the history of the company and kind of how it got founded. And I know you talked a little bit about that at today's ribbon cutting ceremony, but talk to us a little bit about that.
So our biggest thing is that, I've been really researching our family history for my families that were associated with the H.C. Blake. And, knowing that we're going to have this grand opening, knowing that we're going to relocate, knowing all those different things, I really wanted to go back and really understand my family that was part of H.C. Blake. And so what I did was I started researching and looking through old deeds and old newspaper articles. And what I really found was pretty amazing. We, I guess 4, 5, 6 times great-grandfather, Adam Hall, moved here in about 1811. And he moved to Huntsville in 1811 and purchased property from Leroy Pope. A lot of the property that he purchased is still in our family. And that's
Wow.
pretty amazing. So, you go back to his son was Adam Hall and James Hall, and they had a blacksmith and a cotton gin on Washington Street. And so they purchased land, and Adam Hall and his wife Margaret moved here, and they brought their 2 sons, James and Adam. And when they came here, they purchased a place called Bram Plantation. And Bram Plantation ran from where my office is now up to close to Jordan Lane. And then they purchased land on the mountain it was called Red Top. And so they bought a lot of land, but they were also workers. Their children one had a blacksmith shop and one had a cotton gin. And so James Hall and Adam Hall were their children. Well, Adam Hall he was married, but he didn't have children. And James Hall had a daughter named Sarah. And so James had multiple people that are all his children are spread out from Athens, Limestone County, and all around Huntsville. And what's really amazing was Monroe Street was named for one of his children. Woodson was named for one of his children. So Hall Street, Blake Street, all those streets that are near Stove House, and that's where Brown Plantation was located. Stove House, 804, where Stone Middle School was, and all that. And so James had a daughter named Sarah. And so in 1850s, this Irish immigrant moved to Huntsville. He was with the Southern Railroad, and he was with the Southern Railroad, and he basically built it was the Memphis to Huntsville line. He worked on it. So he moved to Huntsville in the 1850s, and his name was B.W. Blake. And B.W. Blake must have been a blue-collar worker, and he must have been very mechanically inclined, because in the 1850s he came here, and he was Irish, and he was probably in his mid-20s, late 20s, and he met this girl, Sarah Hall, whose family was not as much blue-collar then. They were landowners and this. So they got married, and B.W. Blake started, and he was the street superintendent, and he was the superintendent that put all the lights around the square in the 1850s. So my family has been enthralled in the trades well over 135 years. It's almost like it was in our blood. So in the 1850s, he did that, became the street superintendent. And what's ironic is that 6 generations later, I'm on that same board as a street superintendent.
Wow.
It was run by Huntsville Utilities. And so we have a rich history in the sense that the street superintendent and the gas lanterns he put around the square are no different than the gas and water board that I'm on now. So it was pretty, at one time it said, I read that he drove the first spike in the dam for the Big Spring. And that was to dam it up to create the water pool for the city of Huntsville. And he also built the turnpike to Monte Sano Mountain. And so the construction was in his blood. The mechanical ability was in his blood. And so he was really a true blue collar worker in the 1850s. And then he had a wife that came from a different type of family who were landowners and retail, landowners and retail. So it was pretty amazing, and it's pretty neat to read the past stories of the history he built. And so that's really where I base the history of H.C. Blake on. I have a big, deep lineage. My other side of the family are the Wades from Bob Wade Lane, and there's just a lot of family history. But the earliest I can get back to is about 1811 in Huntsville, and that was from the Halls.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think Huntsville was incorporated, was it 1805? Does that sound about right, Jim? I think that's right.
I think it was, Alabama was what, we're on the 200th year, so it's 1819 was Alabama.
Yeah.
Leroy Pope and all of that was, we'll have to call William. But right now, I don't know exactly that date, but it was around 1811 when they got here.
Talk to me then, and I had an opportunity to hear some video from today's ribbon cutting. Was BW, was he the one that kind of founded, is that kind of who founded H.C. Blake, which I'll trace it back to him in 1884?
Well, the 1884, so BW was a mechanical contractor, I guess, and we could really trace it back even further than that, because he, our business is the same as what he was doing then. He was putting street lights, he was hooking up gas lines, he was running water lines in the 1850s. And what really came about was he had 2 sons. He had James and Hall. And James came from his Sarah's father, and the Hall came from his Sarah's father. And so James and Hall started a plumbing, heat, and air conditioning company together. And James moved to St. Louis My other grandfather's side, my grandmother's side, my grandfather's side, the Bryants, which is one half of my grandfather's side, they had moved to St. Louis, and so James Blake moved to St. Louis, and he became the street superintendent in St. Louis. So he was an inspector and a superintendent in St. Louis. So the engineering, the construction, the water, the plumbing, the heating, the electrical, the gas runs deep in our veins. So H.C. Blake took the company and named it himself, and he was on the square at Southside Square, right? He was two doors down from Cotton Row, and
Okay.
and then B.W. Blake died in the 1900s, early 1900s, and he was a pretty old man when he passed away. But H.C. Blake just kept running with it, and he had been taught what to do. He was a very hard worker, and I think he was a very stern man, and he was also very involved, and he was also on the utility water board. And so right now we can trace back, there's been 5 of our family members that have been chairman of the Huntsville Utility Board. And that's a pretty good, that's a special thing. That way, just put him back to your city of Huntsville.
Well, that's really amazing, Jim. And just to think that you've got that connection and your family has that rich heritage of giving back to the community that I'm sure that they saw that gave so much to them, and that somehow, as you kind of said at the beginning of the show, it's just in your blood. It's just in your DNA somewhere that you have this yearning that you want to give back to your community that has allowed you and your family to have a company that has been able to sustain over so many changes and growth and the depression and everything else here in our community. And that's really amazing that you guys
Well,
all
they
do
were all
that. And it's,
servant leaders. I think they were
yeah,
all servant leaders. They were all politicians. They all wanted to make sure that things were done right. We've had B.W. Blake. We had pretty much a city councilman on the council from about 1860 into the 1970s.
wow.
In the 1970s, my uncle Hall Bryant, he was a city councilman, and that's pretty much it. Every century, pretty much from the 1860s, 70s to the 1970s, we had a family member that was on the city council, and so they always wanted to give back, but they always had that mechanical mindset that they wanted to solve people's problems and they wanted to help people with the problems. And so H.C. Blake had his nephew, which was my grandfather, and my grandfather was living in St. Louis. And my grandfather told me when he was 12, he had to come live with his uncle. I don't know if the times were bad or what, but he moved to Huntsville to live. Him and his brother moved to Huntsville to live with their uncle, who was a plumber, and his wife, and they lived on Home Street right across from our office. And they lived in a bungalow there. And so they grew up with the man that was a plumber, and he was stern. They didn't have any children. H.C. Blake didn't have any children. And so I think that he embedded that work ethic into him and embedded that mechanical ability. And it was probably not very fun because plumbing's hard. I mean, we grew up having to dig, me and my cousins, and we'd work there every summer. And we just, I was most of them are lawyers or doctors or pilots. They have great work ethic, but they just didn't love the mechanical part of it. So H.C. Blake, my grandfather, Hall Bryant Sr., moved here to be with H.C. Blake, and he lived here, and then he moved back to St. Louis to play with the St. Louis Cardinals.
Oh,
And he
wow.
played baseball with the St. Louis Cardinals in their farm league, but he moved back there, and his uncle basically sent word that it was time to go to work and quit playing, and it was time. So he moved back to Huntsville, and he kind of became the number two man and started to take into that seat of being the number one man. And then Mr. Blake, H.C. Blake, got sick. And when he got sick, he passed away pretty quick. And my grandfather was a pretty young age. I think he was in his late 20s, early 30s. He took over H.C. Blake, but he also took over as alderman in my great 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 uncle's spot. So he took over once he passed away. He took over his spot as being an alderman. So they thought that much of my grandfather.
Wow,
So
that's really
pretty,
cool, Jeff.
yeah, it's pretty deep history. And his friends, they were just, you know, you read through the back deeds and back wills and the obituaries, and all you see is who's who built our city. B.W. Blake. It was not James. James Hall's will read Eccles and another gentleman that street's named downtown. And then when H.C. Blake died, it was Hutchins and so forth. And the Hutchins are still a big prominent family, and they're also a plumbing company in our city that we've been competing with for over 130 years, and they
Yeah,
have the same history.
that's
So
really neat. Jim, talk a minute about how, the company from mechanical, the type of work your company has done, and certainly as technologies change, electrical and, HVAC has come along in the more modern times. I'm sure that's really, been a big driver, but it certainly is the town has changed. And I know for our law firm who's been here not near as long as you guys, but a long time, over 82 years, that the firm has changed and adapted over the last 80 plus years, and really more in the last 30 plus years. Talk to us a little bit about how your company has changed from either the types of services you provide to the growth with, people who are watching from outside. Huntsville is just growing by leaps and bounds. If you don't believe it, just walk around the square and you see renovation projects, new construction projects. If you drive out in different communities in Huntsville or Madison County, there's new homes going up all over the place. But talk to us a little bit about how that has impacted and changed how the company has grown and changed over the years.
the whole time, I would say since the day the company has started to now, the company has adapted at every growth spurt that Huntsville's ever had. And that's probably why we're still in business. But we did not expand beyond our means when the city grew. So what would happen is the city would go up, we would go up, but we would not get out of control, and we stayed in control with our finances, our debt, and our cash flow. And
Mm-hmm.
so as our city is changing, what you're going to see now is that as we have changed, and we have changed a lot. I go to a lot of national meetings and national events, and our company's won a lot of national awards in the last 3 years. But 3 to 5 years, we've won multiple awards. And the reason is I call ourselves the oldest, newest company in the country. We are so outside the box right now that it's amazing. Our people we've hired are unbelievable. I walk in my office every day and look at my people and say, am I in the right office? They're that good.
Yeah.
But to survive in this era with communications, with Facebook, with Twitter, with text, with all the social media, you can't be on your B game. You have to be on your A game at all times. You have to address problems like
Mm-hmm.
no tomorrow. And
That's
we
right.
have a saying is every problem is an opportunity. Every problem we have is an opportunity. If a customer is upset with us, it's an opportunity for us to get better. If a supplier is upset with us, it's an opportunity for us to get better. If an employee is upset with us, it's an opportunity for us to get better. So as we have changed our culture, and our culture is so different. I train, I am having at least 5 to 10 training sessions a week.
Wow.
We're training on everything from soft skills to how to present products, how to it's not our decision. Our decision is not what to fix. It's presenting the problems to the owner and the solution and letting that owner choose what solution he wants. And that's probably the biggest thing it's hard to overcome with people is that the solution is not ours. The solution is what the owner wants. And if we can give the owner different solutions, a good, better, best, or 4 or 5
Right.
different options, it's the
Right.
owner's decision to choose those options.
Right.
And that's a hard thing to do because in our industry, and you go to somebody's house and their toilet's not working, or you're in the summer in July and their air conditioner's not working, and they're not very happy. They're
Right.
not sitting there ready to hug you. They are ready to hug you, but they might have had to wait. And so when that service guy gets there, a lot of customers don't understand that the guy's been in the attic for 10 hours straight and it's 150 degrees. And that guy is supposed to put his booties on. He's supposed to make sure he parks in the right location. He's supposed to walk in the house the same way. And we're trying to present a constant product and
Mhm.
constant solutions that the owner can choose of what meets his needs. And that's and it is hard. But we work 5 to 10 times a week in trying to achieve it. Like a typical day, we'll have a training on a new product. A typical day, we'll have a training on a new solution on how to present it. I fly people to Huntsville 3 to 4 times a year. I bet this year I've bought 30 plane tickets for people to go leave Huntsville and go somewhere and go to an expert in the industry and learn new techniques. Whereas 10 years ago, I would have never done that.
Right.
15 years ago, I didn't even think about that. 30 years ago, we didn't care about that because the Martinsons would call me, the Beesons would call me, everybody would call you because we all lived in 35801. But now with the markets expanding, they don't know who Martinson and Beeson, the attorneys, are. They don't know who H.C. Blake are. All they care about is H.C. Blake has 1,000 Google reviews and they're 4.9 stars and they take care of people.
That's
And
right.
that's the key. So it's no B game anymore. It's
Yeah,
all F.
I love it, man. You're firing me up because a lot of the things that your company culture are things that I'm very passionate about. And I think a lot of what you're talking about really crosses over business entities and enterprises. And that's so true in your world, in your professional setting. It's very true in our services setting here with a law firm is that, people are vetting you. And even if what I found out, Jim, is even if somebody recommends me or my firm, even before they call, they're going to do their background work. They're going to look online. They're going to Google around. If you don't have the proper representation online from website to Google reviews to other credentials and things that are there, even if you were recommended by their neighbor, they're probably still not going to call you. And I love how you look at, when there's a call or a question, it's an opportunity for you to get better, your company to get better. But I think it starts, and you said it so appropriately, it starts with your people. And you've got to have the right people in place. You've got to provide them the right opportunities and the right training and the right resources so they can be motivated to give good service and get good results for your customers. And I know you're doing that. You're leading the way here in Huntsville. But hey, in today's times, as we said, with the community growing, with the advent of technology and more people getting here, it's not just a handshake and a grin and grip like it used to be 30 years ago. And there's still some of that going on, but a lion's share of it now is people reaching out, just what we're doing right now. People reaching out in a Facebook group or on Facebook. Hey, our HVAC's on the outs. Who did you use? And if they used your company or Jim's company, Bob's company across the street, and they didn't get a good response and good feedback, buddy, I can tell you what, as well as I do, they'll light you up on Facebook or anywhere else. And so I think it's so important.
I love complaints. Complaints are what takes my game to another level. And problems, complaints, they're opportunities. And the opportunity that I can get from any kind of complaint or a problem are 10 times better than somebody not telling me. I am all about being told. If you have soft skin and you're in the service business, you better get out because you're going to go broke. You cannot have soft skin. You can't let things affect you and dwell on you. Things, opportunities, and it's a hard thing, but the culture we're trying to create is from the bottom to the top and top to the bottom. We record every phone call we get. We grade every phone call. We track everything we do. We know what's going on. We know where the leads are coming from. We know who's calling us. We know who's not calling us. We know who we don't want to do service work. We know who we do want to do service work for. But we want to do work for everyone. But service is changing so much, and it's such a different game that if you're not on the top of your game, one day if you're not, then it can really hurt you because of social media and everything if you're not addressing the problems.
You're so on top of it. I mean, you're spot on, and I hear this in some of my legal communities, and I think a lot of people in my community are not on top of this, and that's to their detriment. I think the only issue there, Jim, is when you hear that negative feedback or you hear a question or concern, is making sure you address it so it's not a concern in the future or not an issue in the future. Because if you address that concern, that person's less likely to leave negative feedback, more likely to be appreciative, not always, but most of the time, appreciative of you listening to their concerns and addressing what that is as best it can be. Because if it becomes a perpetual issue, you won't be around a long time. There's no doubt about it. Jim, I want to be mindful of your time. I do want to wrap up with one thing that I was really blown away with today. We're kind of sitting here talking about, your people and your culture, and that's, how that's really allowed your company to blossom and be recognized in your industry as a leader, not only in Huntsville, but in the services industry all over the country. And that is something you announced today at your ribbon cutting about a scholarship that you're going to offer for, it sounds like, employees and their family members and maybe others in the community that want to go into services or mechanical field. Talk to us a little bit about what that is and why you were so passionate about making this opportunity for those that may want to look into some other trade type skill that's so needed in our community today.
So 5 years ago, I decided to make the call and to stand my culture and say, hey, we've got to start training. So I built a training facility. Finished out a place on Hundley. It's about 10,000 square feet, and I've got a total training facility inside that building. And in our new facility, we're going to relocate that training facility. So we train all the time right now, but we bring in subject matter experts. So the subject matter experts we bring in are so much better than just having one person that can teach things Instead, if you have one person, they can't teach everything. There's no way
Mm.
anybody knows all of it. So we started bringing in subject matter experts. Subject matter experts can bring a person's level up twice as fast. We also started doing profiling to where we can see what that individual is. He a task oriented, engineer oriented, sales oriented, people skills oriented, or what? So we started identifying all those different items. So with that being said, we announced the B.W. Blake Scholarship Fund. And what's that going to curtail is that we have employees, all these employees have children. A lot of these children don't want to go to a 4-year college. Some of them might want to go and be a beautician. Some of them might want to be a nurse practitioner, a nurse, whatever the nurse helper is. So different things, or even if they want to go to a 4-year school, I want to be able to have the opportunity to where I can give them scholarship funds to help them. Right now, I've always helped them out on scholarships, but it's been very small, and we're going to look at stepping it up. And then for people outside of our office, we're going to start offering some scholarships also. And it's not so much as it doesn't even have to be in the trades. It doesn't have to be in a trade school. It doesn't have to be a 4-year university. Any training that an individual can go to that will better himself inside of our company, or young people that want to better themselves to come to work for us, or even young people that are showing that interest and the wanting to do something, we're going to take applications to where we can start helping them to achieve their goals. You know, one thing we did today is we had a goal planning session. Right now we've got over 100 employees, and we sat down and talked about our personal goals, our career goals. It's not work. We have a career at our office. We want people to stay at our office. We want people to build their career. Work is what you're going to do, and you're going to leave that company. We're a career-oriented company. And then we had our bucket list. We had our bucket list goals. So the personal goals are what God and the family need to be involved in. I don't need to be involved in those goals. The work goals and the bucket list goals are what I need to be involved with. So my goal is, we just enacted something today where we have a constant text site, because if you measure it, usually you'll get there. And so what we're doing is we had a text and just a form site that they're filling their goals out, that they're going to get a periodic text on how are they going on their goals. How are they achieving their goals? What are they doing to get to their goals? And so we're going to remind them. So if we can bring our people up, and we take our people to the next level, and we take their children to the next level, and we make their lives better, our goals will all be satisfied. So if I can get everybody else to achieve their goals, my goal will be satisfied.
Dude, Jim, that is fantastic. It's so awesome what you're doing for your employees and for their families, and providing a better opportunity for them to make a career out of working with your company, and love working with and with your company, and being a part of something bigger than themselves. And that really makes it when you create that culture there with the company, and then you're bringing their family into that, and listening to them and what their needs and wants are, allows them to be better employees and stewards of your company, and allows them to provide better services to your clients and your customers, which is just a win-win, which is going to mean one thing and one thing only, is that H.C. Blake's going to be around for a lot longer. Jim, I really appreciate your time today. I know you had a lot going on today, and appreciate you carving out about 30, 40 minutes for us here to talk to us about the history of your company. Folks, if you're watching, I'm going to put in the comments below the video here, I'll put a link to H.C. Blake's website, and I will tag them as well. So follow them on social media. If you've got questions or comments or needs in the mechanical trades, heating, plumbing, HVAC, electrical, reach out to these guys. Jim's no stranger to answering questions and seeing what they can do to help or give you solutions, as he said. And check them out. I encourage you to check them out. Just like Jim said, I don't think you'll find anybody in town that's got better reviews than they do.
And if you have any young people or anybody that are good people, we don't have to have all mechanically inclined people. We have a job. We have tons of different jobs.
Okay.
So if you have people that you know and you want to recommend to me and you want to recommend them to come and talk to me, hey, FaceTime message me. You can go through Facebook and message me and ask me about employment, or you can ask me any question. I'm always with the Facebook. You can put the messenger on there. Now, sometimes it might take me to the next day to get back to you, but I will get back to you. But We're looking for good people.
Well, I tell you what, folks, if you're looking or you have children or friends or family that are looking for a job and want to be a part of something bigger and a great company that's going to be looking out for you, your whole family, and looking to provide you great resources, a great working environment, and a great opportunity, and I don't know that I could know anybody else in town that's going to provide you what we've heard today for the last half hour. Jim, congratulations on the new location. Congratulations on all the success and the continued success that I know you and your employees and your company are going to have with the type of culture that you. Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You too.
Merry Christmas.